Welcome to the Thunderstock Show, collection of valuable brainstorms, enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's special guest is Vlad. Vlad is a fellow marketer. He's an avid reader and listener of books. And we're going to talk about all things health, wealth, wellness. Pretty good topics, if you ask me. Vlad, what's going on? Speaking of books, you were telling me you've listened to over 300 books, and now you're slowing it down to one a month. What are you listening to and why?
Yeah. So yeah, like we were talking about earlier, right? Like I've probably at least 250 I've probably listened to. And it's implementation is key. So I'm listening to the E-Myth by Michael Gerber right now, and I'm trying to implement as much as I can. So the thing I'm doing now is I'm just said, okay, one book per month, and I'm just try to implement the hell. So I'm running the hell out of it. So I'm running that experiment with my partner. My partner actually, he read the book Jolt, which is a great book on sales. And he's not really a sales guy in the company, but now he's been implementing it, and he's actually just closed 3 deals for our marketing agency here, which is great, right? Because now I don't have to do all the sales. So I think there's really some value, obviously more value in implementation than theory, but still it's like, when do you stop learning? Never. So yeah. So the book, The E-Myth, is a phenomenal. Have you read The E-Myth?
I've read it 10 years ago. I own a copy or two. I haven't picked it up since. You're making me think I should revisit it. I'm a big fan of when you find books that are valuable and they're context dependent, you pick them up and it's not, once and done thing. Like, oh, I read that a while ago. It's like there's some books that I've reread and reread. And like you, I'm an avid reader. I was an avid listener, depending on how much yard work or exercise, cardio I want to do. That's when I typically listen to books, but even it's a good one. But to your point, it's balancing the reading of the book and then the applying the knowledge, because I think that if you don't change your behavior, you can't really have evidence that you've learned something.
Exactly. 100%, right? If you're not changing your behavior and not learning, arguably, when I listen to these 250, it sounds impressive, right? Like this is audible or whatever. But and then I took notes on every one, right? But it's like, how much has my behavior really changed? So the question I'd have for you, Ross, is really what books have changed your behavior the most consistently? And maybe you go back to them over and over again to change your behavior more. Now, that's actually something I've done with The One Thing by Gary Keller, which we have like a one thing multiplier channel in my company where all my whole team, so I have a team of 10, my whole team, I tell them like, hey, every day think of one multiplier activity you can do that is gonna, like, if you do this thing, it's not just gonna help you or your one client, but help everybody. So that book has been really instrumental. What about you? What do you got?
I want to comment on the one thing. I have a Slack for one of my internal teams, and it's just called The One Thing. And I haven't read Gary Keller's book, One Thing, but every day we're saying, hey, here's my one thing that's going to push the ball forward today.
Yes.
And then, everyone gets to put it out in the channel, hold themselves accountable, make requests for somebody else on the team. This should be your one thing. So I think there's a ton of power in focus and making sure that you do the one thing exceptionally well instead of trying to do 10 things terribly.
Yep.
And as an entrepreneur, I feel like that's a curse that many entrepreneurs have, is to try to do tons and tons of things, a bajillion ideas, as opposed to getting one idea to be awesome. A couple books that I've read and reread and reread and changed my behavior quite a bit. In no particular order, I would probably call myself an evangelist of EOS's framework for leadership. Why is that? Because when I got into corporate leadership at a marketing agency, I had no leadership experience. And that was a one way to fast track my not just ability to lead, manage, and hold accountable, but my ability to understand business. Now that I do FCMO, it's imperative that I have a big picture perspective on business. So Traction has been one that I've read and reread, other books in that library. Another book that I would say has been instrumental in terms of business, boy, the first book I ever read on personal development and business was Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I read that a couple
Ah,
times. I think a lot of people that get into entrepreneurship have read that. And the reason it's instrumental, I think, one is Robert Kiyosaki is an expert marketer. So he's great at unpacking ideas and making them so that they're understandable for all, as evidenced by his board game that um, I forget what it's called. Maybe it's based on cash flow quadrants. So that's another one. And then controversial take, but important. I've read the book Atlas Shrugged probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 times. Not so much recently, but when I was in developmental stage, I think it was important to read something that takes a long time. It's dense to get through, like 1,000 pages, and it really trains your reading muscle. And it really framed my outlook on pursuing excellence and a lot of ethics when it comes to like being objective and fair and being honest and like what is a good person. So
How
those
old
are
were you when you read Atlas Shrugged?
oh gosh, 16.
Man.
I had a first edition paperback. So my grandfather, who's now 95, I had all of those books, and he was a huge avid reader. His library was pretty impressive in his study. And I was just like, "What's this?" He's like, "I recommend you read this." So I did, and I read all of them. I actually was a
Nice.
philosophy and literature major in college because of those books. So
Is there a series, like an Atlas Shrugged series or something, or all the?
there's not necessarily in chronological order. Actually, what got me hooked on it was there was a fantasy book that I've read several times. If you're into that genre, it's called Sword of Truth by Terry Goodkind, and that was based off of objectivism and Ayn Rand. And why that was important is because, growing up, I was tried hard in school, tried hard in sports, and then in the downtime, I was like, I'm going to read. And it was just one of those books that was not only an escape, but it taught in parables and lessons.
Nice.
And yeah, tied it back to that. So those are some of my books. How about you? What are
I
the one thing was a big one for you? What else?
in fourth grade, the first kind of real book I read was the biography of Malcolm X.
Okay.
I didn't. Everybody was doing like a book report on like a history figure or whatever, and I was like, all right, I'll go over this Malcolm X guy was. But then after that, I read the first. That's funny. The first big book I read, the Snowball Effect for Warren Buffett's Snowball Effect. I don't know if you read that one, but
No, but that's
basically
an interesting one to read in
a
that
mentor
high
of mine
school.
gave it to me. And I remember working my ass off because it's like 900 pages. So I was like, I'm going to read this. I'm going to impress him. Right. And then I read all of it and I didn't really, it was interesting. Right. One of my favorite, I think, quotes from the book, I'm definitely butchering everything, but because it's like, many years ago, but it was like, life is like rolling a snowball, like building a business or I don't know, making money is like rolling a snowball. You just have to pick a hill that's long enough and slick enough for the snow, and that's and then it goes over Warren Buffett's life story, and then I ever since then I've also listened to 2 audiobooks for Warren Buffett's life. But basically, I worked my ass off. I listened to this book, I finished it, and then after I'm like, yeah, so I finished the book, I'm ready to talk about it. He's like, oh, I never read it. He's like, I just thought you'd like it. So I was like, eh. But I've also listened to on Audible. Was it Fountainhead? Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've listened to that book. It's the one with the guy is into with Howard Rourke, I think, is one of the
The
characters.
Architect.
Yeah, yes, because I heard that Mark Cuban loves that book, and I was like, I might as well do like because I never do fiction, so like might as well do like a fiction book and see what the heck happens, and maybe because I heard also there's actually a book that Jeff Bezos loves, like he loves to read fiction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like there's this one about like the waiter. I think it's like the Sands of Time or something, or like the Sands of Tomorrow or whatever. Like Bezos has his own
Wheel
like
of Time.
no. I mean,
No,
I can look it up and tell you real quick, but
that's fine.
it's basically for waiters. It's like a story of this waiter, right? And how he's like really good at customer service, which makes sense because Amazon's all about customer service. And but really it didn't. I don't know. The fiction one's kind of like you don't really translate. And then but even the nonfiction books, because I've read like 90% nonfiction, they don't really they haven't impacted my behavior as much as they should. Besides, Goggins' book was a great one. I think Can't Hurt Me, because
Mhm.
I listened to that one while training for running a marathon. And
That
then
one I think should be designed for Audible because he does the commentary with the writer, and it's almost like a podcast within the book. So 10
uh,
out of 10 recommend to listen to that.
yeah, and it's great for like if you're training for something hard. So I was training for a marathon at the time, and so that's what happened there. And then yeah, they're Peak Mind by Mishi Jha. It's a great one because for anybody who thinks meditation is a waste, which I used to think that way, it's more about attention. So she has these attention exercises, and what I found really fascinating in that book is actually about stopping procrastination, and how even back when there were newspapers, people would complain that even in medieval times, like, hey, I can't pay attention because of this literature or these images or something. They would always get distracted, right? And so people think it's like, oh, social media is why I get distracted, right? So is it social media, or is it actually training your brain to focus on the next task and your attention? So your attention actually is, I think if you take your 2 thumbs and you put them like this together, your attention actually is your vision only goes this far, and this is how much you see when you focus on things, and everything else kind of gets blocked out. So she talks about like these mindfulness training activities. Anyways, They were good. I actually have a company, Audible. So my whole business has an Audible account. So then team members can go through if they're listening to any books on any topics or they're working on projects. So I thought that was useful. Yeah, good
Yeah,
stuff.
I like in reading fiction, going to the Bezos comment you had, in a similar way as having like athletic or like leisurely pursuits. I think that reading fiction keeps your mind and your sharp. It's just like a one mechanism in order to train and like develop that skill. And we talked earlier about reading as being a skill, and even listening, paying attention is a skill. And you have to like work that as a muscle. You mentioned that you have done marathons. What, in terms of wellness, do you find to keep sharp? I think that oftentimes people in entrepreneurship think that the only thing they should be doing is working all the time. But I actually find that like all work and no play makes everyone dull. You know?
That's
So
the
what do you
good
do?
all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy quote.
That's it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, my life philosophy is pretty. It's from when I was 21. I met the CEO and co-founder of Costco, Jim Sinegal, and he told me, he said, "All of you guys are going to do well." I was like, "I don't know." I was like, "Maybe those guys." It was like his secretary. She had the common sense of actually placing me when I was like 20 with the like three other 20-year-olds, and she's like, "I'll just save Jim's time." Which at that time, I mean, that Jim was CEO of Costco, like he was crushing it. And I was amazed by his kindness, just giving me 30 minutes to meet him in person and take notes, which I lost my journal. I should have recorded that whole meeting, really. But I remember one of the things that stood out that really just impacted me was he said, focus on your finances, focus on your family, and take care of your health, and you'll do great. So then what I translated that into health, wealth, and relationships. So that's so I have this little journal. I journal health, wealth, relationships. So every day I'm pretty boring for health. I count my calories. I use MyFitnessPal,
Yep.
and then I'll go and I'll just do a 30-minute exercise every day. And it could be on like on Monday, which it's like not my favorite day of the week because I just came out, from the weekend. What I do is I just do jogging or walking. So then I get to look forward to that on Mondays. But then Saturday and Sundays, which are like the days off, I go really high intensity exercises. So like really heavy weight training, weightlifting. Cause then I'm like, well, you got the whole day to just lounge about and do
Right.
more leisure activities.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's kind of my
something
routine.
there's something to the central nervous system balance too, where like I think that in my teens and early 20s, I thought that I could just power through. Sort of like my early stages of entrepreneurship. I was like, willpower is a muscle that I must flex at all times. And it's like, you can't always be flexing. So much like you, I think that understanding that even just stretching and doing yoga, or even just going for like a long walk, you still reap physical benefits, but the compound interest, like the snowball effect, you get a lot more long-term returns when you constantly can stick with it and stay consistent than if you were just to do, you know, as much as I appreciate and admire Andy Priscilla and 75 Hard, I do not find that forcing yourself to do the workouts on a longer than 2.5 month period of time. Like I've done that before, and there's always a trade-off, right? And maybe that's like I'm more grumpy around family, or maybe that's I have less time to focus on things because I'm compulsively doing that. So balance in all things, but I love that you're focused on one thing that's evident talking to you already is that you're a data driven person, like very logical. And I think MyFitnessPal is one of the best inventions for people to really get a grip on, because if you don't track it, it's like how you can't really be surprised if your health and wellness fluctuates. You're not going to be surprised if you track it.
That's going back to business, actually, ironically, the tracking as well. I think you talked about how, small business owners are just constantly doing too much. And I think that's the problem. If you're just doing many things, you can't track many things. And if you can't track your inputs and your outputs well enough, you're not going to get the results you want. And so I was actually just doing that for my company, Restoration Inbound. Basically, we started doing cold email, conferences, cold calls, Google ads, SEO. We also tried gifting as well in the past, but then I realized I'm just scaling back on all the marketing channels, and we're just probably going to stick to two. We're going to add two more. We have one that we've already proven out, but basically, I realized that with all these marketing channels, it's just really just a mile wide and an inch deep, and it just doesn't get you anywhere. So I think it's like really compounding, right? How do you compound something? You have to stick to it long term. And how do you stick to something long term? You don't pick many things. You pick one thing. And when you're young, you think you can do it all. And I think that's why you don't get the results you really want to get. And then I remember looking at older people, and I was like, how the hell do they get so much more done? And they're just moving slower than me. right? It's because they pick one direction, they just keep going that direction. Versus me, I'm like going left, right, up, down, all around, and then still don't get there.
There's something to be said to youthful exuberance of trying a million different things, because then you get enough data and testing to say what doesn't work or what you don't like. Even more importantly,
Yeah.
when in your life and career did you know? It sounds like you've been entrepreneurial for a very long time, a hard worker. But when did you know that this business that you're doing now is the business you want to be doing? Because you've been in business for what, 10 years almost.
10 years, yeah. Arguably longer than that. Started at 19 I got lucky. So, when I was, I'm gonna say 19, there was Chuck Norris jokes, right? And we saw there was no Bruce Lee jokes on the Android App Store. I loved Bruce Lee growing up. So I was like, dude, there's no Bruce Lee jokes. There's Chuck Norris jokes on the Android App Store. So I went to my cousin who in middle school built his middle school's website. So he's very technical. And I was like, you could build this little quotes application, which today I can build a quotes application. I probably should actually. I'm working on like little coding side projects right now. But basically, so we ended up building that app, and in 2 weeks we got 2,000 downloads. And when you're
Wow.
19, and my cousin was like 17, he's like a year and a half younger. He's like 17 and a half. When you're 17 and a half, or when you're 19, you get 2,000 downloads on the Android App Store. You're like, man, this is interesting. And then when I graduated college at 20, when I was 20, I ended up getting about 200,000 downloads on the Android App Store because my cousin, he was like, what do we do now? I was like, why don't we just build 30 more of these apps? All we just need is images and quotes. And so we just ended up doing quotes applications on the Android App Store and just getting a lot of that search traffic.
Was that
And
monetizable?
we made about $2,000 to $3,000 a month. And
Nice.
to me, it wasn't impressive. I was like, not good enough. I was thinking to myself, I was a lot more egotistical than I am today back then. And I was like, I'm 20 years old. Zuckerberg is here. I can beat Zuckerberg. And I just did not. But I was too afraid to raise funding. So I never raised funding, actually, ironically. I got all these downloads and everything. And I wanted to be like Zuckerberg, but I didn't, have any mentors. Didn't raise enough funding. Didn't really just understand all it took, I think. I'm still trying to figure that out, right? So long story short, that was the first venture. Then then after that, I was like, it's not me, it's the company. I'm going to go to a business to consumer business. So I'm going to go to a B2B because that was a B2C. I was like, I'm going to start a B2B. So then I did a CRM company, Skyreal. We got to, I did a bunch of cold calls, try to get some clients. We got to like maybe 8K a month, 10K a month in MER. And I was like 23 at this time. And then we just keep trying different projects. And I was like, it's not taking off. So then I started the next thing. But then at that point, things were dark, and I was like, man, maybe I should get a job. It was hard. It was hard. Even in this company, the first year and a half, I ended up in a mental facility because I didn't know how to, like you talked about, how to pause. So I ended up working a ton and trying to do $1 million my first year. I was like, my first year I had to do $1 million in revenue, and I burned myself out. I just stopped sleeping. I just tried to keep working and just stressed myself out too much. And I'm already wired super hard. And at the same time, I just put a ton on my plate, and it just broke me down. So I think I knew business was for me probably after I did my first like 70K in a year in personal income. And then I was like, okay, I could make I could make 50, 60K a year. I can find some way to live off of this thing. Now, I put like the groundwork in, and I think I can be better. And then ever since then, it's just been compounding every year. But there's another conversation, Ross, right? Do you go for pure profit? Because I haven't been. I've just been reinvesting in my company every year. I could make a couple $100,000 a year. Real talk, right? That's not impressive, by the way, right? A lot of people,
but you can make more than you're making if that was your goal.
Yes. So my goal isn't just to make a couple $100K and being like a marketing consultant. My goal is to build out a team and build out systems and processes to scale the whole thing, right? Which a lot of business owners, I think they go for profit too fast, actually, and that's why they never hit the $1 million mark. What happens is, this goes back to the Michael C. Gerber, like E-Myth book, right? They just become really highly paid technicians, and they just stay in technician land, and they never learn how to be that entrepreneur or that CEO to scale the thing, because it takes a lot of investment. It's expensive to learn. These are fucking expensive lessons, man. I've spent so much money. I've lost so much money, but it's expensive.
Yeah, I've reinvested in my own education and skill development over the years, to the tune of, people are like, oh, well, college is really expensive. And I was like, do you know how much people can spend on management consulting? Do you know how much people can spend on hiring people to train them? It's like, I love the quote that it's like, successful people invest in skills, unsuccessful people invest in distractions, rich people invest in making more money, poor people invest in basically just wasting money. And it's just like, how do you, it goes back to what you're talking about with your attention, excuse me. It's like where you invest your attention, that's where things will develop and grow. And there's always a trade-off, right? Like you said, you invested your attention in growing your business really fast and hard, but then you had to take a step back through, you know, consequence of events to then say, how do I do this on the long term, play more of an infinite game? Similar to your, I had scaled a company from 0 to 10 million in a few years.
Wow.
And, but it was a completely different business vehicle than what I was used to. Like I've started and stopped being like the solopreneur, self-employed, like marketing consultant. And I've had like profit doing that. And I, you know, always switched gears before it became a mature thing. And then when I joined with partners and we essentially the vehicle was a private equity firm, sponsorless funds. We'd find deals, do management consulting, marketing, finance, operations to improve the business and scale that way. That was great. Like it was great for my ego to have success and to make plays and, you know, really knock out of the park on paper. But then similar to you, I had like a come to Jesus moment or like a breakdown when my daughter was born. I was just like, if I were to go down, play this out and go on this path, then I would fail at being a husband, fail at being a father, and not fail to achieve, be the person I wanted to be. So it's important that when you put your attention to a place, set a goal, and invest in the one thing, you're really sure that that's the thing you want to be. And then you reverse engineer it and say, okay, well, how do I do this if there was no time limit? Because I think to your point about trying to get to 1 million in a year, like that's way harder than people give themselves credit for. And like it is like people think that, you know, everyone's a millionaire. It's like very, very few people. I think it's like less than 10% of all people that are entrepreneurs ever break past 7 figures.
Yeah,
And
just
it's
in
like
revenue. And we're talking just in revenue, right? Not
just
even
revenue.
personal. I think to be in the top, I think 5 or 1% is like 400K a year in personal income.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Right.
just even doing 1 million is a huge accomplishment.
Huge accomplishment. And it's
Yeah.
absolutely like deserves applause.
Yeah.
So now you've been in business for 10 years. What's it like on your 10th year versus your first, well, let's say your second year? Because we talk about your first
So
year.
much.
Like how has that changed?
It's, you know, I just posted this to my partners today. It was the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you heard of that one. Basically,
Very
where you
familiar.
start.
Talk about it all the time.
Yeah, right. So when you start, you're like, I know so much about this thing, you know, like let's say like, you know, like somebody's trying to do what Ross did right here and they're trying to get into private equity. Like, I know so much about private equity. What does he know? You know, he's wearing a t-shirt on a podcast. I could go compete with that guy. So you start, you think like first you're like, I don't know anything. You read a couple, you do like 10 blog posts. You're like, I know everything about private equity, man. I'm going to be a billionaire in private equity. And then all of a sudden, right, 3 months or maybe 6 months in, like real life hits, obstacles hit. And then it's just a cliff. It's just a cliff down of reality, right? And you're like, shit, like look at all these obstacles, right? And so what I've learned is the grass is never greener on the other side. I've learned to stay focused. And then also what I've learned is to keep track of your success. You celebrate the little micro wins because that's all you ever going to get. You're only going to get micro wins. Like people like that are out there wondering like, what does it feel like to run $1 million business? Well, it feels like you feel right now. There's really not that big of a difference, right? Same thing with like money in the bank or whatever. And then, so the micro wins is what I'm learning to really appreciate over time. When back in the past, I would not appreciate the micro wins. Like first customer, first close. I wish I did this and I didn't do. I didn't. You know, some people, they used to frame the checks or like they laminated.
They're
or
the
whatever.
first dollar in a restaurant. Yeah.
I wish I would have done that. I didn't do that. I can't name my first customer today, right? So I can't look back and be like, oh, well, this is my first close. Because if you do that, then it motivates you. Be like, man, look how far I've come. Like I'm making real progress, right? But if you want to feel bad about yourself, which I used to do a lot of, you just start comparing yourself to the next person that's 10 times bigger. And then this is my favorite story I actually tell people because the truth. This is my little, my life. I've been really fortunate. I used to also run these networking events for 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure speakers would come in. I even had a billionaire come in and speak one time. And basically, and the reason I mentioned the billionaire is, here's how it goes. So first, I'm like, oh, I'll be happy when I hit $1 million in revenue, right? Guess what? Hit it. Happiness is not tied to that at all, right? Happiness is a feeling, right? Success is an objective outcome, right? These are two different things. But then my mentor, he runs a $40 million company with 40 employees back then, actually. Now he's in the public stock market today. And I'm like, 40 million, that's $1 million per head. That's great revenue per head. Like those are golden. That's like Google metrics. And then I was like, how does it feel to be at that level? How are you doing? He's like, I don't know. He was like, Vlad, actually, you're having Nathan Myhrvold speak, who's the first CTO of Microsoft. He's like, I'm a peon compared to that guy, right? And I was like, man, he's at $40 million, $1 million per head company, paying himself like probably like $3 to $5 million a year personal income. He's like saying he's a peon, like he's talking about himself that way. I was like, what? Wait, so you don't want to? Because I told him, I was like, I'm having this event. He's speaking. Do you want to be the guy to interview? He's like, nah, no. So then Myhrvold comes in, whatever. Myhrvold's a great guy. All these guys, obviously, to even giving me a second of their time, right? Amazing. And then we have the co-founder of Microsoft Excel, Shimoni, come in, and this guy is like, like one of his good friends is Bill Gates. And then he's like, I was like, so how does it feel to be a billionaire, right? Like we were standing in like a circle. We're like, what are you and Gates talk about? Is it Lamborghinis and islands? And they're like, no, we talk about families. How's your family, right? And I was like, that makes sense. And then we're like, so how is it being worth $3 billion? And then she literally, I'm sure I'm butchering it up, and he's much, he gave me a much better answer, like 10 times better answer than I'm going to give. But for my offhand, what I heard was something like, I'm just making a couple billion. The real billionaire is like Bill Gates level, like 60 to 70 billion. And in my head, I'm like, you're a $1 billion level man, right? Like you're amazing. But then he did highlight that they just talk about family, right? It doesn't really change at that level. So then I go back and I'm watching an Elon Musk clip actually on YouTube. And then there's a clip of Elon, and they're like, Elon, how does it feel to be the, most powerful, billionaire, right? He goes, I'm not really that powerful. Look at Vladimir Putin. He's got an army. I'm like, really? It just never ends. So it never ends, basically, is what I learned.
Right. The comparison trap is similar to the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you think that when, you're just starting an entrepreneur that hasn't really made cash the checks yet, hasn't hit seven figures, you're like, oh, if I just do X, Y, Z, I could be a millionaire. And then the millionaire is like, I could be worth a centimillion. Centi's a billion. And it's just, ad infinitum. But the thing they have in common is the relationships. And it's such an interesting, I think people should learn that sooner. It would change people's perceptions on like time and success and what that looks like. And then another thing you mentioned before, you were big into Bruce Lee. One of the authors I spent a ton of time researching in college was Jiddu Krishnamurti, which was like a spiritual advisor. Are you familiar with Jiddu? Oh, you got to read Krishnamurti.
Okay. Well, yeah.
So anyway, the idea to be like water, people should understand that water has all different types of forms. And it's just like, you basically just means to be adaptable. Like to be adaptable and to be, you can't really destroy water, because what happens is it becomes vapor or whatever. You're never really done. So the reason I bring up him is, what are some of the mindset shifts once you've realized the Dunning-Kruger effect and you've gotten past that uninformed optimism, then informed pessimism, and now you're on the other end where it's like you've got, 7-figure business and a bunch of employees, and like you've been in business for 10 years. What are some of the ways that you have, whether informed optimism or you've gotten through that valley of despair where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck?
Getting through the valley of despair is hard. Yeah, I've only got 4 or 5 employees, but then I got another 5, 10 contractors to work with, but I get it. For me, the way I get past things, it's one of my mentors says it's all a mind game. All this shit is a mind game. So you are the one who knows yourself best, and you get to pick the rules of what winning looks like and what losing looks like. And for me, winning looks like something right on the edge of my comfort zone. I don't have to go crazy and go skydiving, even though I've done that too, right? But it has, it's because that was like a lot, right? It could just be in like, you know what? I went on a 10-minute walk today. My goal is tomorrow I'm going to go on an 11-minute walk, right? 10 minutes, right? Can I do that? Or you know what? I just want to do one cold call today. I've never done cold calls. I'll do one cold call. And in fact, it doesn't have to be a call. It's a dial. That's actually how I did over 1,000 dials, cold dials. And that was a marketing channel that I did. I started with, you know what? I'm just going to do 2 to 3. Oh, that wasn't so bad. I'm going to do 4 or 5, and then basically say, okay, well, how about keeping consistent? And then you play that mind game with yourself around these metrics. So over time, I think what's changed, I think in the book, there's a great book, Principles by Ray Dalio, and he says that whatever you think it's going to take, you multiply that by 2.5. So if you think it's going to take $10,000, it's probably more like $25,000, right? If you think it's going to take 10 days, it's probably more like a month, maybe a month and a half. So that's what I try to do when I'm looking at accomplishing any goals. And then the other thing that's changed is that I've started mentoring as well, because I have mentors, and these are not paid, by the way. These are free mentors. So, and now I'm really grateful. So then what I do is I give back to the next generation. And what's interesting is you find that they have the exact same. So we talk about comparison, for example, Ross, right? Like I'm mentoring this kid. He's amazing. He got like the co-founder of TED to have a meeting with him for advice and, TED Talks and all that, right? So this kid, he was like, Vlad, how do I stop? How do I not compare myself to others? And I was like, good question, right? I'm trying to do that as well. But then you find that all this stuff is universal at every level. And it's really as cheesy as the cheesiest cheese ever, but it's really the love of the journey. And so those things I think help. In terms of marketing, my thesis when I started the agency has proven correct, which is it's all about building a community. Like if you think about the best companies, they build communities around whatever they do. Like Apple has an Apple fan club, right? Nike, Michael Jordan, whatever, right? So for me, it's all about building relationships, and the channel is just your method to build that relationship, whether it's through writing or a podcast like this, or through Facebook ads or cold calls. You're just building relationships, whether it's one-to-one or one at scale. So that was my thesis, and I think I proved to myself that it's correct. Like I've closed clients for my own agency and for others through basically every channel, even podcasts actually. However, the thing that I didn't do correctly was I underestimated how much work it takes to get that first close, and then also how much additional work it takes to get the other channels. So for our agency, like we've closed probably 30 deals through SEO, our own SEO, right? But we never had a full-time SEO, right? So it's like, I wonder what happens if we would have focused on that full-time. Or cold email. We closed 3 deals through cold email. We never had a full-time cold email campaign. It's like everything is kind of juggling, and has been my problem. Because I think it probably got ADHD. People look at my calendar, they'll see that like it's like full, and then I have an executive assistant, and she basically schedules all this stuff out. It's because I have to manage myself. And then my favorite quote, like I said, for this month, I'm going through the email, so I'm going to quote it a lot. It's your business is a reflection of your thinking. And I realized that the reason my business is at the level that it is, and I was talking to an 8-figure agency owner, and he said, Vlad, I'm saying this for myself more than I'm saying it for you, but it goes for you as well. The reason your company is at the level you're at is because of you. And it goes back to the emails, right? So your thinking is your business, and that's why you have what you have. And I know it can be hurtful for some people, they're like, I don't deserve this. It's like, well, it's not about what you deserve. It's about kind of these, the input and the output.
Yeah, I think systems thinking is incredibly important, but also understanding that humans are humans all the way down and all the way up. I mean, just because somebody is a billionaire, somebody's, this, that, top of their field, doesn't mean they don't experience the same human pain points that everyone else does. I've talked to someone I was at a conference in Las Vegas at acquisition.com, an Alex
Nice.
Hermosi event, and I was talking to a guy, and I didn't know who he was, and he didn't know me, and it's like, oh, let's connect on LinkedIn. And he goes, oh,
Was it
for
Alex
real?
himself? No, I'm just kidding.
No. That would have been a different conversation. And the guy had like 500,000 followers on LinkedIn. I was like, what? This is you? I'm just standing next to him, met him for the first time. He's like, yeah, I've been posting every single day for 5 years. And I have this community and blah, blah, blah. And then we were talking about ADHD. So I also have ADHD. And he was like, yeah, I would really like to do this, but there's no generic alternative. I was like, yes, there is. And I was like, it's like one of my goals that I try to measure myself off now that I'm 35 versus when I was 25. 25 was so like revenue driven and like vanity metrics. It's like, how many people can I actually help in a day? When I was 25, it was like, all right, I can send 100 cold dials, 100 emails. I can work from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day, and all the inputs taken care of. But if I didn't help anyone, it kind of felt meaningless. And like, even just as simple as like, hey, here's some tips on how to deal with ADHD. Like, I would never have been able to connect with that person other than in that instance in context. And I recently did a podcast. You asked me before, how do we make this the best podcast ever? One of my favorite podcasts, I didn't even know that this was the case. It just happened organically during the conversation. The guy I was talking to was business partners with Ray Dalio, and through his son, Devin.
Wow.
And he was Devin's mentor in mergers and acquisitions. And it just all randomly happened. And I was like, well, how did it happen? He goes, oh, well, he called me up one day, and I was in the same area as where Devin was living, his son. And he said, hey, my son's in his 20s looking for help. And he goes, I can't really help. My son my child has some health problems. And he kind of blew off Ray. And then Ray called him back. It's like, look, well, I'll help you with this. And I understand, like, family first. So then they had like a 15-year relationship. Like,
That's
and
crazy.
the story to me is important because it's like, you never know who you can help when you just pick up the phone or like answer the phone or dial. And it might be, a conversation that could change your life. You're always just one conversation away from changing your life or somebody else's life. And if you keep score on, how many people can I positively impact, like, I think a lot of times a patient person or a wiser version of me would just say slow down and like solve for helping people, and then things start to fall into place. That's my take.
Yeah, no, that's, there's a Mark Cuban quote. He says, it only takes one. It only takes one company, one client, one star employee, and it changes everything. And that really it goes back to, I think, the maturity thing of going deeper versus wider, and this is what we're doing right now. We're scaling back all our marketing channel. We're only having, and frankly, we probably just needed one marketing channel, but we got three, right? So we're going back to three. So even then, right, I'm probably gonna have to focus even more to max it out, and just focusing on that one channel. There's one of my favorite books actually is called Traction by Gabriel Weinberg. So a lot of people know Traction by Gino Wickman. They don't know that Gabriel Weinberg, I think maybe before that, or maybe during the same time, also wrote a book called Traction. Now, Gabriel Weinberg, I think, is actually probably one of the most successful entrepreneurs of all time. He's the founder of DuckDuckGo, and he has actually a whole methodology that I basically just tell people they should follow. Like I tell them, it's one of my favorite marketing books ever. And he talks about, and there's something called the bullseye method. So just imagine a bullseye, and you hit the target when you found that one marketing channel that's going to take your business to the next level. And then once you find it, you just go all in on that channel. You maximize the bets to get the most asymmetric returns, and you go on to the next thing. But I think you've also hit on something still very valuable that people overlook, which is your customer experience is marketing, right? If you take great care of your clients, that is one of the best marketing ever, marketing forms. By the way, that's also how I've changed from year 2 to year 10 now. It's like, I used to think company values were BS. I used to think that you should never really care about branding. I think branding was a waste of time. Like, I come completely 180 now, because I realized that if you go deep on that one client and you crush it for that one client campaign, you can build so much more leverage. You can turn that into a case study. You can turn that to referrals, right? You can just leverage the hell out of it. And I think our problem is, in maybe society, I would say, is most people, they go too wide, too fast, and they never really hit. And that's why they never hit mastery. And because they never hit mastery, they never get the results they want.
Bruce Lee said he fears the man
Yeah.
who did a kick 1,000 times versus somebody who's done 1,000 techniques. There's a lot of potency to mastery because it puts you in a club that's just unique. And I think, I was at a friend of mine's wedding, and I was sitting next to a guy who was the top of the field, Olympic gold medalist, world champion several times. And I was just kind of like starstruck talking to him. And he goes, bro, we're sitting next to each other at the same wedding. He's like, in this it's like, if it's a wrestling match, kick my ass. But in a wedding, it's like, so it depends on like the game in which you're trying to master. So I feel like there's a concept from Alex Ramosi. He's like 1 of 0. It's like, build the game that like no one can compete with you in, like building your community, building your moat, and be the most useful person at the thing. And then the only way that I've ever helped to get over any comparison trap was the more you refine the filters, like with ad targeting, for example, like the more you have filters, the less and less your total addressable market is. Like if you're just to say money as the only filter which you compare, it's like everyone can find somebody with more money than them, right? Or power or whatever. But the more you get specific, and I don't want to say necessarily niche, but more specific on how you define the game you're playing, or the ideal client you're serving, or the target market, whatever, the more, then you get to intimately know them and intimately know yourself. And you have a value prop that you're no longer compared against your competitors. Like, I'm not comparing Vlad against every other ad agency out there. I'm comparing him against people that specialize in that industry, with that protocol, with that experience, with that geographical location. So, comparison's the thief of joy, but uniqueness is just, I think, the journey of self-discovery. Everyone's unique.
Yeah, I think the way you become more unique is you focus more, right? You focus that lens, that tip of the spear, and that's why we're focused on restoration. Like, we hit 1 million at being a generic marketing agency, but then I realized the churn rate was not good, right? And I couldn't really. And by the way, still, I mean, I've taken some generic clients from 500,000 to 3 million, from 3 to 10 or whatever, but it's harder to replicate because you're not a master. So I started specializing probably about 4 years ago in fire, water damage restoration marketing, and being able to have really repeatable conversations with clients is super rewarding. So it's really a lot. That's the other thing about focusing. It's a lot more rewarding when you focus because you can measure the inputs and the outputs better, and there's less to track, so you can think clearer. So
Right.
whoever, whatever business you guys have out there, there is always a way to focus and I think refine that business, and that'll really be valuable. And yes, I 100% agree, by the way, Ross. You do have to experiment, right? You can't. It's not like you're just always going to know. But I think the key is you got to have a focused experiment, because when we were experimenting, we just had like 4 channels, and then you're just doing activities. You're actually not being purposeful in your actions. So I was talking to one of my team members actually, even to the freaking day, right? And she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go do some Facebook posts." I was like, "Okay, well, how do you know it's successful? What metric driven activity is going to mean it's successful? And what volume of that are you going to do?" She's like, "What do you mean? I'm just going to do the post." I'm like, "Yeah, no, it's not. That's a failure, right?" So I think it's really easy for us to get distracted and not become productive when we forget about the metrics and everything you do.
It's deep because how else can you know good, bad, yes, no, improving, not improving? Like if you don't measure it, it's like, how do you get better? And I think everything that's coming back that we're discussing, whether it's like, increasing or measure, like being conscious about spending time on learning and reading, whether it's, testing things and staying in the long game in business or helping people or whatever it is, it all comes down to mastery. It's like, how can you take action to increase the likelihood that your mastery will increase? And if you have a plan that you commit to that, then you can be like Warren Buffett, who has the compound interest thing figured
Yes.
out. You know, people want to have the wealth of Warren Buffett, but they want to develop the habits that he did to get there.
Well, that's so funny you say that, and I'd love your opinion on this, Ross, because I love so many things. I love anime, I love video games, I love business, I love networking, I love whatever running, marathon activities, strength training. I did a little bit of MMA. I think you had like a jujitsu episode, which is cool. That's I've done jujitsu for a couple months. Playing the piano, right? I play the piano. I'm building an app, right? So then I think people out there, they're kind of overwhelmed like me, like I like everything. There's so many things I like most of the time. So then the question becomes, okay, what do I focus on? What marketing channel do I focus on? Right. And so what's happened was, and it drove me crazy because I love health, wealth, relationships. And I was like, man, I'm gonna have maybe if I had a business for health, wealth, relationships. But then I realized, like, Vlad, you don't have to monetize everything you like. Like, you don't have to monetize your favorite pair of socks or your favorite band, right? Or your favorite song. Like, you don't have to monetize everything. So then the question I'm just asking myself is, okay, what's the easiest to monetize that scales the most? And that's how I came to the answer of what business path to follow. And then for exercise, it's like, okay, instead of like, what's the easiest to scale? It goes, what's the easiest to do frequently every single day? And then what's the healthiest diet to do frequently every day, right? Like those are kind of my shortcuts and hacks. What about you, Ross? How do you pick what to focus on?
So I'll use the mixed martial arts and Brazilian jiu-jitsu analogy. It all depends on the context. So I've met people that have been doing jiu-jitsu since the inception of it, like since the 80s or the 90s, like right from the source. I've done seminars, and then I've met people that are amazing jiu-jitsu athletes that started a couple of years ago, right? So it's not necessarily time invested. It's not necessarily reps, although they do help. In my own experience, I started doing jujitsu pretty seriously in like 2014. And it's almost like instead of Dunning-Kruger, where you start here and you go down and you go back up like an inverse bell curve, it's almost like narrow, wide, narrow. So the journey that I have found is like when I started jiu-jitsu, to make this analogy, I knew how to wrestle, so I was a collegiate wrestler. So I just relied on that skill set. And then I kept getting submitted by more experience, like higher belts. And then I was told by a coach, is like, white belt is you have to learn the language, like the alphabet and like the numbers 1 through 10. Blue belt is you have to learn how to make sentences. Purple belt is you have to write those sentences into coherent paragraphs. Brown belt's chapters. Black belts you can write a novel. But he goes, after black belt, it's like your poetry, where like you can actually express the art.
I love that for all learning, by the way. That's a
I,
great example for all
I think
learning.
it applies to all learning. So I'm currently a purple belt, but the shtick is like all my cohorts that started are now black belts. I have friends that are like world champions and masters and all that stuff. Like, I'm pretty deep into it. But what I found that the people who excelled versus me, who's like, I've been a purple belt for many years, for 5 years, because of reasons we don't have to go into, is they've prioritized a game plan like where there's a heuristics, like if this happens, then this, because of their past experience and like the continual learning, they keep refining the answer to everything. It's like, when you're playing ping pong, for example, there's always like, okay, stimulus response. Like, how do you get shortcuts? Like, I think all learning, especially in jujitsu, is like, how do you commit to the right answer at the right time in the right context? So, like, if you could have people that are world champions at, at something, but they're really, really good at like a sequence or a submission or a couple moves. It's like, how do you increase the likelihood that you'll be put in the positions that you're the most comfortable with when other people can't see it? So how that applies to, I guess, business or mixed martial arts, like learning, I'm sort of divesting from the initial question you had. But the last thought on this is, I am not the best wrestler in the world. I'm not the best jiu-jitsu person in the world. I'm not the best cage fighter. I feel like I'm pretty competent. I've got some conscious competence in that, but I'm really good at explaining what I'm good at. Like, I can teach it because I've thought about it. So I think for anyone in business or sport, it's like how to choose is how to then, it's like really how to reflect. It's like, how do you look back and then judge, like score yourself? And the more honest you can get with like, this went well because this went poorly because of this, like that's the only real way I think that someone can reach their potential, but they need to keep going to get those more reps. So that's why some people, they can become world champions in 4 years, is because they shortcut their learning. Like they're just amazing at a thing and they don't care about the things they're not amazing at. That's my martial arts mastery experience.
Interesting. I think in terms of how to choose, I was watching this Hormozy video. He says when he went on a date, he wrote he said all of his non-negotiables, so really a lot of times to get unstuck, I think you have to get out of your head and you have to get organized. And so write it down, right? That's like the first thing I would say is just get it all out of your head, right? The next thing is drill. Once you do choose, right, and you feel like quitting, you have to be really honest with yourself, which is, one of the Feynman, right, likes to say, one of the famous physicists, he says, you are the easiest to fool, right? The trick is not to fool yourself, but you're the easiest to fool. So it's like, have you really drilled down on the details? So like in your jujitsu, like chess actually was my example I was thinking of when you're talking about like some people, they just know one move set, they just go all the way out, right? Also, when it comes to jujitsu, right, have you drilled down on the details, right? Is it like, I don't know, whatever, a heel hook submission or something that you can't do, right? Or is it, mastering the rear naked choke? I think there's all these little sub skills. When you go through really the learning process, you have to master all the sub skills. It's like playing a song, right? You might be able to be really good at the beginning. You might be really good at the end, but if you can't play the middle well, the song's going to sound horrible. So I think the people that get mastery very well is they're able to just drill and drill and drill on all the little sub skills. They can play all the notes and then they can play the song very well. And that's one of the benefits of focusing.
Yeah. I also think there's focusing on what you can control, what you can't control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, going on the Hormozy thought pattern of like his dating behaviors and non-negotiables, there's also the honesty of saying like, okay, I am 5'8", I weigh about 200 pounds, and I have this as like my anatomical structure. Yeah. It's like, for me, I've got short legs, long torso, not a tall guy. Most people like guys are taller than me. I'm not a triangle choke person.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Don't focus on things that you don't have. Like rule number one of entrepreneurship: use what you got. Then what do you got? Like ignore what you don't have.
Yes.
There's a lot we can go in mastery, but I feel like this conversation is useful for anyone listening to then reflect and say, okay, well, what do I have? Like how do I determine where to invest my attention? And I'm going to pivot really quick and ask you one of my favorite parts of the show, which is leave a question, ask a question. The last guest, knowing who you were, Vlad, has this question for you, and it's aptly asked. And it says, what are you not letting go of that's holding you back from the next step in your journey?
Wow. That's okay. So what am I not letting go of? I would say I'm not letting go of, well, the first thing that came to my mind was like failure, right? Taking big risks, big pivots, like acquiring a big company, right? But really, I think if I drill down deeper of what I'm not letting go of, I think it's all the little tasks in my business, right? Like I think my partners can handle one-on-one meetings. Like one of my cousins actually, or he started so I started this business with my cousin, right? So he started closing deals, right? So I think I can give him all the kind of the deal flow, and that way I get to really focus on what matters, which is building out these systems, these SOPs, and these deeper processes. So I think if I do that, it'll take the business to the next level. And then the other thing I need to let go of is really I think getting the emotions out of the business, right? You have to be really, I think like the best business people are just really metrics driven, right? So maybe they're driven by personality, like they have like a emotional goal or a deeper kind of goal they want to get accomplished. But when it comes to running marketing tests, they're just very metrics driven about it. And I think I have to get there. So that's yeah, it was a hard pivot you just did on the podcast, but yeah, there's
Now,
your answer.
maybe an equally difficult question is, what question do you have for the next guest without knowing who they are?
This is actually a fun one I was going to ask the audience also, but it's where do you have an unfair advantage in life, and where can you actually further imply it to
Yeah.
compound that advantage?
Where do you have an unfair advantage, and how can you?
Yeah, and how can you further use it to compound success in your life? Because that's really, when you were talking about earlier, Ross, that's what I was going to talk to the audience about as well, right? It's like life's unfair, right? That's just the truth. That sucks. Okay. And now that we accepted that truth, and you probably, whoever's listening out there thinks they deserve to be more successful, I agree with you, right? That's obviously not the truth, like today. So then, how can you actually take advantage of the unfairness towards your favor? Right. So you guys can ask yourselves that. That's something I always try to ask myself as well about as well. Right. Like looking at my environment. So I'm in Seattle. We're very tech driven here. So it's easier for me to start a tech company here, right, than
Right.
somebody else somewhere. But it
No,
might be easier for you out there to start a lumber company.
that's an interesting question. Love that. And the last thing I'll say is, where can people find you, Vlad, and get in touch? We're coming up on the end of the hour.
Yeah. Vlad at restorationinbound.com. That's my email address. Vlad Gives on Twitter. You can tweet at me, or X, I guess X.com is now that it's called. I can still refer to it as Twitter. Or LinkedIn. You could just add me on LinkedIn. If you just add a note that you found me from the show, then I'll add you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Vlad. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, everyone listening. I don't run ads in the show. All I ask is that if you found value, share it with a friend. Until next time, everyone, be well.
Thank you.